Hi, and welcome back to Filmmakers and Changemakers, the podcast where storytelling meets social impact, brought to you by the Montreal International Film Festival. Today, I am so honored because our guest has helped reshape the way that we tell intimate stories on screen, setting new standards for respect, consent, and creative collaboration. Ita O'Brien is the UK's leading intimacy coordinator and the founder of Intimacy On Set. Since 2014, she's been at the forefront of creating safe, supportive environments for actors during scenes of intimacy and developing the now widely adopted Intimacy On Set guidelines. Her work has shaped some of the most critically acclaimed shows of our time, from Sex Education, Normal People to I May Destroy You, and We Live in Time, showing how boundaries and artistry can truly go hand in hand. She also wrote the book entitled Intimacy, which is available in Canada, so definitely get your hands on it. And if you are in the US, it comes out on the 1st of January 2026. So excited for our conversation today. Ita, welcome to the podcast.
Lola, thank you for inviting me, and thank you for that lovely introduction.
Well, listen, let's dive right in because, your career is nothing short of fascinating. Let's maybe start off, just for people who don't know, what is an intimacy coordinator and why is it so important to have one on film, TV, theatre today?
So thank you. Yes, an intimacy coordinator is a practitioner that brings a professional process and procedures to the intimate content. So if you think what a stunt coordinator brings to creating a fight or a stunt, or a choreographer brings to creating really good dance, it's exactly the same. We're practitioners who support listening to the director's vision. We support the producers by putting in place best practice across the whole of the production, because while it might seem that it's just for the directors and the actors, actually it's for the crew and absolutely everybody. And that's so lovely, again, within your introduction, it's that thing of it lifts the lid, where in the past it was sort of the elephant in the room that everybody was worried about talking about. It lifts the lid on the creative collaboration. And that's what I really enjoy. People say to me, "Oh, you're here to keep people safe." And I say, do you say to your stunt coordinator, "You're here to keep people safe"? No. Of course, yes, they're there to create the best fight or the best stunt. And inherent in the whole process is safety. And the same with the choreographer. That's the same with us. We're here, like you say, to support that open conversation, that creative collaboration to make the best intimate scene. And in the process, we're there to advocate for everybody and to keep people safe. But in that place of everybody feeling listened to, heard, empowered and autonomous, then actually everybody can fly and make the best work.
That's such a great way of explaining it, especially to people who may not know exactly what it entails. But how did you get into it? How do you become the UK's leading intimacy coordinator? And, what inspired you really to create these guidelines?
Well, it was completely organic, and yes, it was. And yes, by default, I'd written my own work, and then I was doing a device piece of work that extracted the core, which was the themes of the the dynamic and the relationship between the perpetrator and the victim. And in that intention to explore what could be challenging intimate content, I was thinking, how do I hold a really good rehearsal process? So I, held workshops to explore that, including a wonderful workshop that was exploring the power of no. So we were connecting with where the body part, where you sit in the different energy centers in the body, and exploring no from each of those, which was just astounding. And there's actually a workshop that I'm going to, start running again because it's so beautiful. And yes, so I created did 2 wonderful rounds of research and development rehearsals. But in my conversations with I was teaching at many different drama schools at the time, and in my conversations with one of the heads of movement, Meredith Stufton, who's the head of movement at Mountview, she said, "Please come and teach what you're developing. I have to note all the intimate content from these intimate scenes, and there is no professional way in order to create it, but you're creating a professional structure." And that was 10 years ago. So while I was, the R&D was from 2014, it was the summer term of 2015 that Meredith said, "Please come and teach what you're developing." And then I co-worked with other practitioners. So I co-worked with a wonderful practitioner, Vanessa Ewan, who was one of the senior lecturers in movement, or still is, at Central. She was the head of the MA Movement Studies course that I did in 2006 to 2007. So I collaborated with her, and her inspiration to that actually the core of then how you create it should be the same as for a fight. That you consider it, that slow motion, you create this body dance, you teach techniques, and you give it that much time and space. But as I was teaching the work over the years, in Vanessa's book, she had a statement saying, in the absence of industry guidelines, you as an artist need to be able to equip yourself with clear ways of how to offer to the director to work with intimate content. And I was thinking, I can change that. I can share with the industry what I'm developing. And that was in the autumn of 2016 and early 2017. I started to share the work with Equity, and then with the group of agents in July of 2017. And then, of course, in October of 2017, the Weinstein allegations and the subsequent Me Too and Time's Up events happened. And I was already there to say, and here, within the industry's intention to work with best practice, here is then how we can work with the intimate content.
I want to touch a bit on, when you're talking about you saying, okay, I want to change that, I want to open this conversation. What are some of the challenges maybe that you face? Because I'm sure it wasn't just a straightforward path to be like, here's the guidelines, this is how we're implementing it. How, what are some of the things you faced? How did you get through those hurdles?
So, yes, while at that point in time, the industry was writing, productions I was working on, they were writing their codes of conduct. I was on some productions where at the initial production meeting, the producer would write out those codes of conduct, basically setting out working with respect for everybody, which was, that intention to work with respect for everybody. And most importantly, and if something went wrong, then there was a clear guideline and process to go through if someone felt that something wasn't right. So that was wonderful. But absolutely, there are many people for whom the old guard, people who were empowered and could wield that power, liked how it worked. And while sort of productions, particularly in the early days, they were calling me in because they wanted this, such as the ones that you mentioned, Sex Education, and then Gentleman Jack were the first two, then Watchmen. I was the intimacy coordinator who worked on all the intimate scenes in the UK, while Alicia Rodis worked on the scenes in the US. And so that was an amazing collaboration with the producers coming across and talking to me and asking me what my development of the work was. So that was all really positive. But then there were times that producers were calling me in because they were told you have to have this new role, but nobody really wanted it. And those times were really challenging. But interestingly, at the time, I happened to be being a mentee with women in film and television and working closely with my mentor, a wonderful lady called Fiona Gillis, who was also herself an actress and a producer. And what she really supported me with, and then what I've developed with all my practitioners, is that aspect of when something goes wrong. And invariably, when something goes wrong on set, the day on set, if something's is not quite going well, there's very little you can do very often on the day on set. But to have that practice of stepping away and going, okay, who was wanting what? Sort of perhaps it was a director that was going, this is taking too much time. Perhaps it was, perhaps one number one cast who was not wanting any choreography while they're working with a day player who was really vulnerable and needing supporting choreography. So those kind of things. Or perhaps it's you were on set and suddenly it became the closed set and I hadn't had the conversation early enough, and perhaps there's a heterosexual couple performing the sex scene, so it's a man and a woman performing the sex scene, and then on set is nothing but men. And that single woman is feeling very vulnerable, other than possibly myself on set. When to have those conversations. So that sense of stepping back, interrogating, and then thinking, okay, so what needs to be put in place in the whole process and procedures? When should you have those conversations? At what point in time, so that point on set doesn't happen again. So, for example, the question of who's present in a closed set. If you've not considered gender parity, then having those conversations early days with the producers, and flagging that, and so it could be considered, and then perhaps swapping practitioners in so there's more parity in the crew of the closed set, those kind of things. So that was a huge part of when things went wrong, looking at it, considering it, and developing the process of how the intimacy on-set guidelines were delivered. So yeah, big learning curve.
Would you say then, just, from where you started in the industry to now, that there's been like a massive change, or have you seen that change? Is it happening? Is there still more to do? I imagine there is.
So absolutely, there came a point of critical mass, interestingly, just before lockdown, when there was so many productions that it was so challenging that as I was saying, that it was sort of the directors and producers didn't really want the work, and then I was, in my role, then I was basically stepped and was in between, what perhaps the actor might have received in the past. I was the one that was receiving it. And my role protected the actor from receiving that kind of, demands and expectations. But as the work has been understood, and in particular, as those productions, particularly in lockdown, came out and people could really see, oh, wow, look at the content that can be created by working openly, creatively, collaboratively. And as you're saying, putting in place, best practice and autonomy, and listening to, and having your actors been able to really trust that they can have a voice, they can really call their boundaries, they can really share their requirements as a positive part of the professional process, rather than being afraid to ever say, this is what no, I'm not comfortable with this. This is the modesty garments that I require. That's been a huge shift. And yeah, actually just before I came on now, I was writing up, I've checked out what the scene is going to be. I've checked out with the cast what their requirements are. And then I write all the wording out. This is what the scene is. This is what has been agreed with the director. This is what the choreography is going to be. Then this is what the cast has agreed to regarding, sort of what nakedness they're prepared to share. And then this is all the modesty garments that are going to be provided. And that's all written down. And it goes to the cast. And they can agree it, they can change the wording, they can check it out with their agent, that's signed off, that goes to the legal department, that's made up into the waiver. So there's absolute creative clarity, and then that support of their requirements and the support of the costume or makeup department. That's so positive. And then a good rehearsal. So then you're putting in place a rehearsal, and all of that is, like, as I say, sort of the day on set, is the tip of the iceberg. By the time all that's put in place, we get to set, everybody knows everything's being prepared, and that's again what allows everybody to then bring the best of their skills, be it as a director, as a cinematographer, as the actor, as a sound department, as a lighting department, to fly and make something of beauty.
You mentioned just then that just before our conversation you were sort of doing scenes, writing things down. Can you tell me a bit about the work that you're doing right now? What does that look like for you? Maybe you can't mention everything, but can you tell us a bit about what's going on for you?
So invariably, anything that you're working on right now, there's an NDA and you can't share any details. I was working on a wonderful TV series called The Agency, which was season 1. So that's that's filming right now. And also, I'm about to work on an opera. So with the amazing Katie Mitchell at the Opera House, and I've now collaborated with Katie Mitchell several times over the past few years, and that work is also really important. So, so the work in TV and film, and how the role of the intimacy coordinator, sort of supports those productions, is now pretty well established and understood. But it's still more groundbreaking in opera. But I've, worked at the Opera House since the December 2021 and written guidelines for opera. And so that's also still, a very, it's not quite established yet, but people like Katie Mitchell are really wonderful pioneers of supporting my work and inviting my work into her productions. And again, the genre of opera historically has, quite challenging content, not just loving content, but abusive content. And, and again, it's about honouring and serving the storytelling, but allowing everybody to, to have a voice, to call their boundaries, and to actually then pull apart what the intimate storytelling is, and again, to choreograph it really clearly.
I'm actually curious, you mentioned working on the opera, and obviously it's a completely different medium to working behind the camera, and it's not the kind of situation where you can go back and change and edit. How different is that to work as an intimacy coordinator in a situation where it's live and you have an audience? You don't control who's there, what it's going to look like necessarily. How does that change for you in your role?
Well, I suppose that, sort of in the industry, the roles have been established as being called an intimacy coordinator for TV and film. That's so akin to the stunt coordinator, so that the people in that world really understand, what we bring there. In live performance, then the role, I suppose, is the fight director, the movement director, and now the intimacy director. So we call ourselves intimacy directors for live performance. And yes, it's you're looking at, again, understanding what the rhythm is of that creation of that art. So there, you'll have a long rehearsal process. So we're looking at how we support that. So invariably, what you always want is for the actors to really understand what the storytelling is, who the characters are, why they're there, and very often sort of actually creating an initial frame that happens perhaps with the director and the cast. And so then when we come in as the intimacy directors, that we're then going, great, why, what the storytelling is, who these characters are, what the dynamics are, and then we can lift and then go, right, and now let's pull apart and create the detail of the intimate choreography, and then again putting in place agreement and consent. But with opera singers, so again, there's different focuses that you need to really support. So an opera singer needs to be able to make sure that their first and fundamental focus is making a beautiful sound. So we're supporting the positions in which they are, so some with some singers, and their techniques are incredible. Some singers, they can literally sing lying back upside down off a bed. And some singers, I might be asking them to crawl and then sing, and they go, oh, no, and it will be bending my neck too much. So actually I need to crawl and then perhaps sit back. So again, the line of my spine. So, and then they have to be able to see the conductor to, so I've had that where I've choreographed the scene and they've gone, oh, I'm now facing up that way on the bed, but I can't see the conductor. So we go, okay, well, let's rearrange the choreography so that we flip it by 180 degrees so they can see that the conductor. And then, of course, we're looking at, and I've had this where you look at what you create the choreography, but then when they start singing, the singing itself obviously has a rhythm to the musicality of what they're singing. And so then sometimes those things can jar. So then you're looking at how you then dovetail what you've created choreography wise with then literally what they're singing. So all of that is again a bit about offering and being adaptive and supporting that creative process. And then of course for live performance, you're looking at, what you've created on in the rehearsal room, the focus is on, then that has to be performed every night. So that's what you're looking at. So then you are putting in place an intimacy call. So on live performance, if you've got a fight or a dance, you have a dance or a fight call that's basically going through that physical choreography to anchor your nervous system, to make sure that everything is all right. If there's any mistakes the night before, you have a chance to speak about it. And then you're just physically going through it. So you're getting a body memory so that then on stage, then you can still just focus on character and storytelling. So again, that is a really important aspect that helps to keep the actor safe, and also things develop. Perhaps you've rehearsed it in the rehearsal room and nobody's laughing, and suddenly you get in front of an audience and then there's a big laugh. So you say, oh, okay, so if we carried on, then people lost, So actually we need to put a hold in. Perhaps there's a comedy kiss. Perhaps they do a kiss, sort of where they bring someone into a lovely clinch and there's a lovely laugh. Well, then we want to perhaps hold that longer. So again, it doesn't mean that things are just held, sort of like once it's created, then that's it. Again, it's about supporting and facilitating that ongoing creative process. And that the intimacy call helps facilitate that. So those are all the kind of things that we're supporting in opera. And then it would be the same in considering the difference perhaps in ballet. Again, I've supported the the Royal Ballet Company at the Opera House, and then that have different considerations, and then perhaps some site-specific work where you've got performers in and through an audience, perhaps in site-specific work. Then they're inviting the audience to come up and engage with them. Perhaps sometimes they're asked to put clothes on or put lipstick on. So again, you're looking at what is that agreement and consent. If you're asking an audience to come out of and step up, and there's touch. How do you offer? How do you really give someone the opportunity to say yes or no? So there's so many different aspects, in which then once we open out and consider this question of agreement and consent and how it's delivered in each different genre.
I would love to know then, sort of the advice you might give to actors, actresses, maybe directors on how to deal with this kind of situation. People watching this who maybe are aspiring actors or are actors who have been in a situation where they're not comfortable. What kind of advice would you give to someone starting out, or things to expect, or how to approach those conversations?
Lovely. So first of all, instead of feeling, how can I say, that I don't like this? So what the industry guidelines have done is flipped it on its head. So instead of, perhaps you're doing a theatre production of Romeo and Juliet, you've got you're up for the part of Juliet. So there's the scene at the top of Act 3 where they've consummated their marriage, and then is this the nightingale? Is this the lark? So you've got that whole scene. So just considering how might that be performed. Sort of like what does the director want to show of them consummating their marriage? Do they want to have that scene to kick off with simulated sexual content, or do you want them to have them just entwined in each other's arms? What degree of nudity and nakedness are you happy with? So as an artist, to really consider what is okay for you? What are your boundaries? And again, this is where, I really invite people, in order to do that, then you need to just really be in your body and listen to your body, and then be able to articulate, what's good for you and what's not suitable for you. And instead of it being an issue or a problem, you're offering something positive to the director. So have considered it, be ready to have that conversation, and then listen to what the director wants and listen to how they want to rehearse it or how they're going to go about it. And if you can hear that perhaps they don't have a practice that follows the intimacy on set guidelines, and offer, but instead of going, I'm worried, it's like the way that I as an artist can give you as a director the best of myself and the best of my skills in this intimate content is through the intimacy on set guidelines, which is, let's consider the content, let's interrogate it, and making a time to rehearse, and putting in place agreement and consent, and then we can create a really fabulous scene. So you're offering solutions to a director, not problems. So you as the artist, do your groundwork, understand what the intimacy on set guidelines are, equip yourself, consider what you want, have creatively considered that intimate content, and then come with all of that to offer, and then invite that open conversation.
That's such great advice, honestly. Like, do your groundwork. It's smart. I'm wondering, you've done so many things in your career. It's crazy. And I know that anyone who is watching this has definitely seen at least one, if not all, of the things that you've worked with. Can you talk about, just maybe to finish off, your proudest moments, milestones, things that you're like, this, I'm so proud of the way it came out, but also because it showed maybe the social impact and the way that, you wanted to show that through the film camera?
There's the main ones. Like you say, sex education was incredible, and the impact of that, both in the amazing writing with Laurie Nunn and what was inherent within this idea of these teenagers sort of like coming together, and obviously working with Gillian Anderson, and the ripple effect then of her role and her being approached to do the book Want is so positive in the world. But inherent in that in that script is actually these young people having somewhere to go. I don't know, help. What should I do? And I really advocate that all our young people, it's okay. You don't need to know. And again, as you mentioned, sort of, I've written this book, and a big part, I've got the chapter of sex education, just really, and throughout it, just really saying to our young people, and really advocating for positive sex education, Anyway, so that was sex education. Obviously, normal people coming from an Irish Catholic background, reading Normal People before I ever was in contact about the book was, again, the text, what Sally Rooney has written and how she's shared a young person's experience of sexual awakening and issues, including the endometriosis, which is such an important issue, and so many people suffer for years without a proper diagnosis. So that, as well as a big part of Conversations with Friends, I'm so proud to be part of. I May Destroy You. Oh my goodness, Michaela Cole's investigation of all those shades of abuse and consent, along with absolutely out and out, sort of like the results of a rape from, from her drink being spiked. And on that score, I want to flag again, an important part of my work is checking out the risk assessment. If there is challenging intimate content. So obviously, as I say that, I'm just flagging, going, please go back and give a content warning, because I've mentioned, challenging intimate content. Like, that's also part of what we consider. But then also times, where you see an embodied woman in the power in her body. And one of those scenes is the birthing scene in We Live in Time. At the time that we were actually filming that, I was writing in this book about the Nina Menkes has done this amazing docudrama called about it's called Brainwashed, about how the female form it so historically has been filmed, and what an impact it has on us, unconsciously, and how a woman is fundamentally seen as a disemboweled person. The birthing scene in We Live in Time is Florence Pugh and Andrew Garfield with the most beautiful connection as Almut and God, I've forgotten his character's name. But the power of a woman, giving birth, it's just so beautiful. It's so gorgeous, and everybody that came together in order to support that amazing scene. And then coming out shortly is The Roses with Olivia Colman and Benedict Cumberbatch, and that as well is the most fabulous script depicting frenemies, these couples who sort of love each other so deeply and then end up being enemies, and there's some really fun intimate scenes in that.
Wow, I'm so in awe of everything you've done. I suppose, at this point, you've operas, TV shows, kids figuring out their sex lives, birth on camera. What would you like to do? If there is anything that you haven't done, is there something you would love to do that, you'd love to say, I would love to work on this project, or something, a different form?
Well, first of all, yes, obviously, this has taken some time to write, working with a wonderful ghostwriter called Sarah Crompton. But I'm really, the empowerment that I'm sharing through this, talking about body positivity, again, taking that aspect of, listening, inviting everybody, listen to your body, connect with your body, so you can bring that to your loving, intimate relationships. So there's, and then the idea of really lifting the lid on our intimacy throughout our lives. That, for me, just feeling, it's not just when you're a teenager that you need to learn. It's your body changes and grows. Perhaps you have a baby and your body's changed after you've given birth. Perhaps menopause. Goodness, your body changes through menopause. And it's not just women that need to understand that, or those with, a womb, but sort of for everybody, because everybody engages with, both halves of, sort of who we are in the world. So I mean, excited to share about just considering intimacy right the way through into our older years and lifting the lid of that, and like I say, the sex education. So I'm, this will definitely be a focus for the next year. I'm then also writing the textbook, so I'm very excited about that. And then from that, I have trained several cohorts of practitioners, but I really want to, I'm looking for, and developing, a really ongoing rigorous training for intimacy coordinators. That's one aspect in the industry that we still need to bring in legislation. And it's not about gatekeeping, but it's about just maintaining best practice and understanding, helping the industry as a whole to understand what best practice is in intimacy as an intimacy practitioner. And which includes a great part of it is the paperwork, so bringing that into the whole of the industry, into our live performance and TV and film. So I'm also really inspired to really establish best practice training, and that being sort of part of the legacy of intimacy on set. So that so at the moment, just anybody can just walk into, to a producer and say, I can be your intimacy coordinator. And at the moment, I feel that we're in danger of the role not being trusted, because perhaps the delivery can be very erratic. Whereas if we and there are many different training providers that are providing really good training, but then we've got a way to go to just really uniform and agree on what best practice is and what the process is, and for legislation to come in so that the role of the intimacy practitioner, like a stunt coordinator or a fight director, is making sure that everyone that says that they are can present themselves to deliver that role is either under training or is fully qualified.
Amazing. Well, I'm so excited to see what you do next. I'm sure I'll probably see it on the screen tonight. Thank you so much for joining me today and for teaching me and teaching everyone who's watching this about your career and the importance of it.
Thank you so much, Lola, for inviting me. Wishing you an absolutely amazing Montreal International Film Festival. And like I say, one year, I really hope that I'll be with you in person.
We are going to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you.